So we're now at the four attributes of true origins, according to the Sanskrit tradition. You'll notice that even though this section is about the Sanskrit tradition, sometimes I'm bringing in the Pali tradition here. That's because the 16 attributes, according to the Pali tradition, aren't the same as these 16. So I wanted to bring in the Pali perspective when it comes to these 16, where it differed from the Sanskrit. Okay, so true origins of dukkha are afflictions and polluted karma. Karma, or actions, are driven by afflictions such as attachment and anger, which originate in the fundamental affliction, ignorance. Ignorance prevents us from seeing the aggregates are empty and selfless. Okay, so here there's a sequence of causation that you should definitely have imprinted on your mind. Okay? Instead of going through all 12 links, the basic theme is the origin is ignorance, which leads to afflictions. Okay? Afflictions create karma. Karma means action of our body, speech, and mind, intentional action, not accidental action. And then that karma brings birth in samsara with all the attendant dukkha that birth in samsara entails. Okay? So from ignorance to karma to birth. When you have all 12 links together, they can be broken down into 3. Yeah, the group, I won't go through the 12 links now, but the group that are afflictions, the group that are karmas, and then the group that are dukkha. In other words, birth and the attendant dukkha that comes. Okay, so that sequence is very important to remember, because that is how you understand why the wisdom realizing emptiness counteracts samsara, because it stops the ignorance. When the ignorance stops, you can't have the afflictions. Ignorance is the chief affliction, Then you can't have the polluted karma, the actions that cause rebirth in samsara. Then you don't get the result of rebirth in samsara. Okay? So according to the Pali tradition, ignorance is a state of unknowing and obscuration regarding the truth. This ignorance functions in 2 ways. As mental darkness, it conceals and obscures the true nature of phenomena. This is what your question yesterday involved. Okay? And then the second way, it also creates false appearance or distortions, the 4 distorted conceptions about true dukkha mentioned above. That impermanent things are permanent, ugly things, things that impermanent things are permanent, things that are dukkha by nature are pleasant, then the things that are foul by nature are pure, and things that don't have a self have a self. Okay? So that last one is actually what, the view of the personal identity. So distortions operate on 3 levels. First, we perceive things incorrectly. Based on this, we think about them in a wrong way. This leads to understanding our experience incorrectly. Understanding the 3 characteristics, impermanence, dukkha, and no self, or not self, clears away these distortions. Through learning and reflection, we gain a correct conceptual understanding of the 3 characteristics. Through meditation, we gain insight into them. Okay? So here you can see certain parallels with the Sanskrit tradition. It's not sure exactly if they're saying the same things. We perceive things incorrectly. There's a false appearance. Okay? Based on this, we think about them in a wrong way. inappropriate attention. Yeah, this leads to understanding our experience incorrectly, the arising of afflictions. This is just my thing, of saying, I wonder, how similar these things are. Okay, but also what's clear is first through learning and reflection, you gain a correct inferential understanding, and then through meditation, you get insight. Yeah. Now, insight in the Pali tradition is not necessarily direct perceivers. Yeah. Well, it's not a direct, put it this way, it's a direct perceiver, but not necessarily of selflessness. It could be a direct perceiver of the aggregates that are that's what's explicitly appearing to the mind, and implicitly the aggregates are known to not be the self or a self. Okay, so it's not a direct perception of selflessness as it is for the Madhyamakas. Yeah, you may remember Jeffrey commenting some time ago, like, the fact that in Madhyamaka you can have a direct perception of a non-affirming negative. That's rather shocking according to the other traditions, because according to them, any kind of negative is something that, it's conceptual, and so it cannot be known directly. It can only be known by a conceptual mind. Yeah. So I'm getting off track there, but it's a stark difference. According to Yogacarya and Madhyamaka, ignorance is not simply a state of unknowing, but is a wrong knowledge that actively grasps things to exist in a way they do not. So this is a difference. Okay? According to Prasangika Madhyamakas, whereas persons and phenomena do not exist inherently or under their own power, ignorance grasps the opposite of reality and holds them as existing this way. Okay, so ignorance holds the exact opposite of the way things actually exist. That is the extent of our ignorance. It's not that we just kind of misperceives things a little bit, like here's the target and we're a centimeter off. It's like we're 180 degrees away, okay? And we don't even realize it. And it's so hard for us to see it, even when it's pointed out to us. Emotions such as attachment and anger are rooted in ignorance. The stronger our grasping an independent I, the stronger our attachment is to the concerns of this self. Okay, so we hold on to an independent I, then, we're very attached to whatever concerns it. We cling to whatever appears important to ourselves and are hostile towards whatever impedes fulfilling the self's interests. For example, we see a beautiful item in a shop. While it is in the shop, we want to possess it. After we buy it and label it mine, we become attached to it. Although the article remains the same, our emotional reaction to it changes by labeling it mine. Behind the label mine is a belief in a self whose enjoyment is important. If someone breaks the object, we become angry. Yeah. Isn't this a description of our life? Yeah, a strong idea of me, then seeing everything through that perspective of me, I, my, and mine, with a lot of attachment to how everything affects this solid me. Yeah, and then the purpose of our life is to get what makes the I feel good and to protect it from anything that interferes with that or makes it feel bad. Isn't that what we do all day?
Yeah? It's what we do all day. And it's all rooted in ignorance. It creates the karma that keeps us stuck in this whole cycle. And we think that doing this is happiness. That's the sad part of it. We think that procuring all the sense objects that make the eye feel good and getting rid of everything that makes it feel bad, that is the extent that is happiness, and that's the extent of the kind of happiness we can possibly feel as human beings. Yeah. We're so stuck in sense, pleasure, happiness that even the happiness of deep concentration, which still is happiness in samsara, but greater happiness than what we have now, we aren't even interested in it. We don't even think of it. We're so addicted to sense, pleasure, happiness that that's all we want, and that's all we think we're capable of ever having. I mean, we have such limited views of human potential. Isn't it? The purpose of my life, the most I can get out of life is fame, love, appreciation, wealth. That's the extent of what we can get out of life. And maybe doing some good actions on the side. But they bring us maybe wealth and fame and appreciation and love, so that's good. Yeah, such limited view of our potential and what the human mind is. It's really rather sad, don't you think? And then the Buddha comes along and says, you're experiencing grade D happiness. You could experience grade AA happiness. And we go, I'm not interested. Grade D happiness is really what makes me happy. Yeah, AA is too hard. And I'll have to suffer to get AA. So I'll stick with D. Yeah? I mean, when you see it like this, I mean, it's pathetic. It really makes you have compassion for living beings. Yeah? In your BBC today, you said there were how many wars and how many armed conflicts?
10 wars, 5 serious armed conflicts, and 10 other conflicts.
Okay, so 10 10 wars. Yeah, and 5 armed, serious armed conflicts, and 15 other, yeah, conflicts. Yeah, and all the people who are involved in this think that it's the cause of happiness. That fighting in these armed conflicts is going to bring them peace and happiness. It's sad, isn't it? Okay. So refuting the I as having independent reality eliminates our attachment and anger. That's why realizing selflessness is so important. Craving is thirst for the satisfaction of our desires. Craving, a thirst for the satisfaction of our desires, is a prominent example of afflictions that are the origin of dukkha. Aside from craving things while we are alive, at the time of death, craving stimulates clinging, ripening the karmic seeds that propel another samsaric rebirth. So craving harms us during our life, also at the time of death. Okay, and we follow craving because we think it's going to bring us happiness. Okay, so then the first attribute of true origins. Craving and karma are the causes of dukkha because they are its root. Due to them, dukkha constantly exists. So contemplating that dukkha derives from craving and karma, we gain deep conviction that all sufferings have causes, craving and karma. Okay? This refutes the idea that dukkha occurs randomly or without causes. Sometimes people have that idea, don't they? Yeah, suffering is just random. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It just happens without any cause. And that's because they are only seeing this life. They don't see causality going beyond this life. Yeah, so they have a bad experience in this life and say, what did I do to create the cause for this? Not understanding, not understanding about previous lives, afflictions and karma. Okay, rejecting the law of karma and its effects, some materialists do not believe our actions have an ethical dimension and live a hedonistic lifestyle, indulging in sense pleasures, with little thought of the long-term effects of their actions on themselves and others. And not only hedonists, not only materialists live a hedonist life. You know, even people who claim to be religious in whatever religion, Buddhism or other religions, you know, live very hedonistic lives. And then, you know, maybe on Sundays, you know, do some kind of confession or something. Sorry. I'm trying to make the eye happy. It was unhappy. Okay. So, so it's not just the materialists who, you know, don't believe in past, future lives. Even people who are religious, Buddhists, people from other religions, then go about their lives seeking pleasure, conquering their enemies, and, you know, maybe do a little bit on Sunday, maybe not. Yeah, or maybe thinking right before they die they can all of a sudden, you know, purify everything. Okay, then the second attribute. Oh, now I have the hiccups. Oh, the eye is suffering. First it's sciatica, then it's the hiccups. What did I do to deserve that? Okay, so craving and karma are origins of dukkha because they repeatedly produce all the diverse forms of dukkha. So understanding this dispels the idea that dukkha comes from only one cause, such as a primordial substance from which everything originates. Yeah. Sometimes even Buddhists think that suffering comes from only one cause. Yeah. They think, you know, I hit somebody, that person's going to hit me back in the next life. Kind of like predetermined. It's not like that. It's not like that, you know. You create some causal energy from harming somebody, so it's not going to bring happiness. It's going to bring some kind of pain, probably to your body, but there needs to be a whole bunch of other conditions that come together. Yeah. And then, depending on the severity of it, depending upon whether you purify or not, then, the results, there's flexibility in things. So, it's not that dukkha comes from only one cause, such as a primal substance or one karma. Yeah, we shouldn't get concrete about all of this. If dukkha rested on one cause, it would not depend on many other factors. If cooperative conditions were not needed for a cause to produce a result, then either that cause would never produce a result or it would never stop producing a result. Okay? If a sprout depended only on a seed, so only on one cause, nothing else would be necessary for the seed to grow. So the seed should sprout in the winter because it depends on one cause, which is the seed. So other things don't matter. The seed should sprout in the winter. Fat chance. Okay, or since no other condition would be necessary for it to sprout, the warmth in spring would not make it grow. Yeah. Because things arise from many causes, they are not predestined, but depend on the coming together of diverse factors. Also, if only one cause were there and cooperative conditions weren't necessary, then once that cause produced the result, it should continue to produce the result as long as that, if the cause was still there. But if the cause went out of existence, then it wouldn't do that. Okay. Then the third attribute. Craving and karma are strong producers because they act forcefully to produce strong dukkha. So understanding this dispels the notion that dukkha arises from discordant causes, such as an external creator that could not possibly create the world and the dukkha in it. Everything sentient beings experience is created by their own minds, by the virtuous, non-virtuous, and neutral intentions, and the physical and verbal actions they motivate. All of these are karma, intentional actions originating in the minds of sentient beings. These actions influence what we experience. Okay? So here, the thing is that to really understand that what is the cause of our dukkha, and that dukkha is not produced by discordant causes, such as a creator God, or it could be a primal substance, or other living beings. Yeah, that the real source of our dukkha is our own actions. So this really makes that point. Yeah, because if there were a creator or some other substance, or you had to propitiate some kind of deity, and then that deity would either bring you happiness or suffering, then, we're really in a bad situation, aren't we? Because it's all up to something external to us. Yeah. And it's a discordant cause. It would be, saying like some kind of external being can determine, my experience. Yeah, creates the cause for my experience, or is the cause for my experience. Yeah. And that puts us in a very bad situation, because then we can't do anything about it. Exactly. Yeah, we would be like puppets. And so it would be like, this whole thing of discordant cause. It would mean that you could put tofu in the oven and come out with a cake. Or you could plant bell peppers and come out with daisies. Yeah. So. Okay, where were we? So, afflictions and karma bring intense dukkha, such as those experienced in the unfortunate realms. When ordinary sentient beings act with kindness, free from afflictive intentions, their virtuous karma is still polluted by ignorance and brings rebirth in samsara. Secure peace and happiness cannot arise from ignorance or craving. So this is often alarming the first time we hear it, because we usually think, oh, our virtuous actions are the cause of liberation. Not necessarily so. Our virtuous actions created under the influence of ignorance are the cause of samsara, but good results in samsara. The causes of liberation have to be free of ignorance. Yeah? So virtuous karma created under ignorance, while good, is not the direct cause of liberation. Yeah, so when it says secure peace and happiness cannot arise from ignorance or craving, it really means that. When we understand that craving and karma are the actual origins of dukkha, we stop blaming others for our problems and accept responsibility for our actions and experiences. With strong determination to dispel craving and karma, we become empowered to change our situation and create the causes for the happiness we want by learning, reflecting, and meditating on the Dharma. Okay? So understanding the first truth of dukkha is important so that we see what our situation is and want to be free of it. Understanding this second one is important because it the cause of dukkha, and knowing that we can do something about them. So that is important because that empowers us to actually do something instead of to just wander around aimlessly trying to get samsaric happiness or following a wrong path that we think is going to lead us to liberation but doesn't. Yeah, so understanding the second truth is very important. It's like if you feel sick, you have to identify what the cause of the illness is before you treat it. Otherwise, your treatment is going to be off base. Okay, then the fourth attribute of true origins, craving and karma are conditions because they act as the cooperative conditions giving rise to dukkha. So not only are craving and karma the cause, the principal cause of dukkha, but they're also the cooperative conditions, okay, that make the karma ripen. Okay, so understanding that dukkha depends on both causes and conditions dispels the notion that the nature of things is fixed. This counteracts the idea that things are fundamentally permanent but temporarily fleeting. That was what I mentioned this morning, Yes, everything's fundamentally the same, but temporarily it changes. When you see that dukkha depends on both causes and conditions, you realize that the whole thing through and through is changing, insubstantial in that way. Okay? So we might wonder, how do craving and karma act as conditions for the principal cause, which is craving and karma, to create the karma and bring the result? How does that work? Well, we can see in our life we may have we do have all sorts of karmas under our mind stream that the cooperative conditions have not yet come for them to ripen. Yeah. When we do actions motivated by craving, we make it very easy for negative karmas to ripen. Yeah. If you have some karma, let's say from killing in a previous life, that could ripen in having a car accident this life, if you act out of craving and go drinking and drugging and then you drive, isn't that craving kind of setting the stage for the ripening of that karma for you to get in the car accident? Okay? So, that's why it's important, not just to purify past karma, but to be really attentive to what's going on in our mind now and what decisions we make. Because the decisions we make put the fertilizer on some karmic seeds or another. They make the opportunity for some karmic seeds rather than other ones to ripen. Yeah. So, when you come here for a Dharma course and you're really putting your energy into the Dharma, you're not doing things that would result in having a car accident because you're not going anywhere in a car. Yeah? So it gives you a chance to purify that karma. Okay? If dukkha were permanent and eternal, it could not be affected by other factors and could not be counteracted. However, when its causes are eliminated, the resultant dukkha will not occur. However, when its causes are eliminated, the resultant dukkha will not occur. Knowing this brings resilience to our Dharma practice. So it does, doesn't it? It makes us more hopeful. Contemplation of these four attributes strengthens our determination to abandon true origins of dukkha. Okay, so it's important to know not only true dukkha, but true origins. Yeah, and just knowing those two isn't sufficient. Yeah, because we've got to see that there's a way to counteract them and that there's a cessation to them too. Okay, but yeah, you've got to know our situation. We've got to know its causes. Then we know that there's a solution and then a path to the solution. Okay, so they often say in terms of the four truths, yeah, in the first two, first they give the result, then they give the cause. Yeah, true dukkha, then true origins are what cause it. In the last two, you have true cessations and true paths. And even though true cessations is permanent and technically it isn't a result, still practicing true paths comes before attaining the true cessations. Yeah? So you have kind of things the opposite direction, but there's a reason for it. It's a very powerful psychological way of guiding our mind to understanding. Okay, now the four attributes of true cessations. So true cessations, yeah, the term is nirodha, yeah, are the cessations of various levels of afflictions actualized by progressing through the path to arhatship and full awakening. Afflictions are of two types, okay? Innate afflictions continue uninterruptedly from one lifetime to another, and conceptually acquired afflictions are learned from incorrect philosophies, in this life. The final true cessations of an arhat, nirvana, eradication of both acquired and innate afflictions, is the example of true cessations. Okay? So you'll see with each of the truths, there's an example that's being used in the syllogism and then there's the four theses and the four reasons that prove the four theses. Okay, so these two levels of afflictions. So since we were babies without anybody teaching us, there's the thought I, and there was the attachment to our own happiness and anger, hostility towards anything that makes us unhappy. Nobody taught us that. Okay? So these are innate afflictions. Yeah. Then, as we get older, we may learn incorrect philosophies and psychologies. You know, like you go to college and you learn that, the mind is just an emergent property of the brain, and that your emotions and everything like that are simply chemical, electrical functions in the brain. And so therefore you start to think, so after death there's absolutely nothing. Everything just continues. So, it's good to do good things for other people, but if I can get away with doing things that benefit myself first and foremost, that's okay to do, because as long as I don't get caught, it doesn't hurt anybody else, and it gives me some extra added happiness. And so then we act out our craving and our hostility and create negative karma due to those acquired afflictions. Okay? Another example of acquired afflictions, most of what fuels a lot of these wars are, of course there's the innate afflictions. Without the innate afflictions being present, you could never have the acquired ones. But the acquired ones are very, very powerful. Yeah? If you develop a philosophy, that God said, this is my land, or God said, we have to establish our kingdom for this religion, and God said that therefore it's okay to kill all the apostates, all the non-believers, all the heretics, all the people who get in the way of fulfilling God's wish. Then you have a whole philosophy that condones violence, don't you? And it's an acquired attachment to one side and an acquired anger, because you learn this philosophy in this lifetime. Yeah? How many wars are going on that depend on having some kind of philosophy behind them? They all have a philosophy. We're fighting for democracy, we're fighting for a caliphate, we're fighting to have the chosen land, we're fighting for freedom from oppression. Everybody who is busy killing other sentient beings has a philosophy behind it that validates what they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it, because I don't think human beings really want to kill other human beings unless they have a reason to. And philosophies give you a whole big reason to harm others. And a whole big reason. Often what's beneath the philosophy is the attachment to resources. Somebody else is taking my wealth or my resources. So, that's one part of it. They're taking what's mine. I want to get them out of the way. But what really blesses the conflict and makes it the right thing, the morally superior thing, is to have a philosophy. Yeah? Remember before we invaded Iraq, there was a service at the National Cathedral? Yeah? And, it was blessed by God. So, This is what I got from being a history major. Yeah? It's the same thing, again and again. So sad, created by the human mind. Yeah? On the basis of, a perceived lack of resources, which we have enough human intelligence to actually learn to overcome. But instead of using our human intelligence, you're taking what's mine, so I'm going to, bite you. But boy, when I'm morally superior, that really gives the umph. Yeah. So, whether your philosophy is religious or communist, your communist philosophy, democracy philosophy, whatever it is, we're fighting for something beyond us. And every living being, I know I'm going off on a tangent, every living being wants to be part of something that is beyond their own self, beyond their own ego, something that is going to be meaningful for others. And our problem is we develop philosophies, that purport, that bring us this feeling of being bigger than ourselves. But the philosophies are not based on equanimity. They're not based on compassion. They're based on me, I, my, and mine. Yeah. And so people want to be part of something bigger themselves. They want to help others. But instead of helping all sentient beings, they're helping the ones that they see as being on their side. And then that automatically creates an enemy that you have to harm to help your own side. Yeah, so His Holiness says that the afflictions nowadays and the afflictions 5,000, 10,000 years ago are the same. It's true. Yeah, but we just have different ways of fighting and different philosophies, that lie behind it. But the mechanism is the same. So these innate afflictions are actually something to be very attentive to, because this is what we teach children. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. So the acquired afflictions, the innate afflictions, of course, we must be attentive to them, because until they're cut off, we can't have liberation. But the acquired ones also, because the acquired ones are what we teach to children. Yeah? This group harmed our ancestors however many hundreds of years ago, or 10 years ago, however long ago it was ago. They harmed our ancestors, which, their ancestors harmed our ancestors, so they are going to harm us. So we better be careful and get them before they get us. And then children hear that. They learn that. They adopt that philosophy. And so you have these simmering conflicts all over the world because children have learned to hate from their parents, who learn to hate from their parents. Yeah? And I think if people really understood how much damage they do to their children, because all parents want their kids to be happy. And they think that by teaching their children to be suspicious of other groups, they're going to protect their children. But actually, very often what they're doing is fomenting crises and conflict that otherwise would not have occurred. Yeah? Okay, let's talk about nirvana. I think we need it. So nirvana is the cessation of dukkha, because being a state in which the origins of dukkha have been abandoned, it ensures that dukkha will no longer be produced. Okay? So understanding that attaining true cessations is possible by eliminating the continuity of afflictions and karma dispels the misconception that afflictions are an inherent part of the mind and liberation is impossible. The knowledge that liberation exists inspires us with optimism and energy to attain it. Okay, so this is another very important misconception that people have. You know, they think that afflictions are an inherent part of the mind, so liberation is impossible. Sentient beings are inherently selfish. It's in our genes. You know, that's the whole thing behind, Darwinism. You know, my genes, and get my genes in the gene pool, and, survival of the fittest, this whole thing. Yeah. And so if that's the case, then liberation is impossible because I'm hardwired in my brain to have attachment and anger, and there's no way around it. And many people believe that. And so, for them, nirvana is like fairy tales. Yeah? And so if you think nirvana is fairy tales, then of course you don't try and attain it. And you don't try and counteract the afflictions, because actually you think the afflictions protect you. Don't they? Okay. So I'm not saying that if somebody, an animal's chasing you, you should just stand there and say, "Oh Mahong, please eat me." A bodhisattva would, yes, okay. But even if we're not bodhisattvas, yeah, we can still run away. We can still save our life. I mean, don't be impractical and stupid about the whole thing. But we can, also want to save our life so that we can practice the Dharma, because we're not yet bodhisattvas. And when we're bodhisattvas, then we can give our body without any fear or any problems whatsoever. Yeah. Okay, so 2, nirvana is peace, because it is a separation in which afflictions have been eliminated. So this attribute counteracts the belief that refined yet still polluted states, such as the meditative absorptions of the material and immaterial realms, are cessation. Okay, so remember I was saying before that some people generate these levels of meditative absorption, and they're so wonderful that they mistake them for liberation. So this is what a lot of non-Buddhists do, And then it's said that at the time they're dying, when they realize they haven't attained liberation like they thought they had, then this incredible amount of anger arises in them because they feel like they've been betrayed. And then that sends them to an unfortunate rebirth. Yeah. So while more tranquil than human life, these states have only temporarily suppressed manifest afflictions and have not abandoned innate afflictions from the root. So this is what we were talking about the other day. They've just suppressed the manifest ones. The innate ones are still there from the root, okay? So not understanding that cessation of all craving is ultimate peace, some people remain satisfied with such superior states within samsara. People convinced of the harm of craving and karma know that their cessation is lasting peace and joy, and they don't mistake it, that the cessation of craving and karma is lasting peace and joy. So then, third is nirvana is magnificent because it is the supreme source of benefit and happiness. As total freedom from all 3 types of dukkha, true cessation is completely non-deceptive. Okay? No other state of liberation supersedes it It is supreme and magnificent. Yeah, so this is really something to, to think about and develop some conviction, So it's free of all three types of dukkha. It's totally non-deceptive. There's nothing better than that. Okay. So knowing this prevents thinking that there is some state superior to the cessation of dukkha and its origin. Now somebody could come along here and say, well, what about Buddhahood? Isn't that superior? And yes, it is superior, but here we're talking within the framework of the Four Noble Truths, which is talking about cessation here, nirvana being the cessation of dukkha and its causes. Okay. So this factor also prevents mistaking certain states of temporary or partial cessation as final nirvana. For example, someone in the desire realm with clairvoyance sees the bliss experienced in the material realm. But because his clairvoyance is limited, he does not see the end to that state and mistakes it for lasting happiness. Okay. Then 4, nirvana is freedom because it is total irreversible release from samsara. So what's the definition of freedom? Total irreversible release from samsara. Yeah? We love our Constitution. Does the Constitution have any idea of this kind of freedom? No. We think freedom means I can go anywhere I want to and spew out and get anything I want to. Freedom is unlimited ability to be attached and chase after whatever object of attachment appeals to me. As long as I don't hurt anybody else, or even if I hurt them, as long as I don't get caught. Or even if I get caught, as long as I have a good defense lawyer. Yeah? That's what we think freedom is. Freedom is the ability to spew out whatever I want to out of my mouth, as long as it fits within the First Amendment. I can attack and humiliate and offend as many people as I want, as long as it fits within, the First Amendment. Yeah. That's what we think freedom is. Okay? But does that kind of freedom bring us ultimate happiness? No, we're just running around like rats on a treadmill. No, wheel, a rat wheel. Rats don't run on treadmills. We run on treadmills. Well, okay, human rats. Yeah. So, we're just like, running, like, let's get the next piece of something that's going to make me happy, and push all the other rats off the treadmill so I can get it first. That's not a treadmill. What is it? What?
Gerbil cage.
Gerbil reel? But gerbils are animals. So if it's a gerbil, rats run on gerbil reels? Don't they run on rat wheels? Rats aren't pets. Mice. Mice wheels. Rodents. Nobody likes them. Gerbils are cute. They don't count as as rodents. Mice are also cute, as long as they're little and they run away. Rats, on the other hand. Yeah, see how biased we are? Yeah, they're just sentient beings trying to be happy. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, the little white rats, yeah. Okay, so liberation is freedom, or the term is often translated as definite emergence. Okay? Because it is an irrevocable release from the misery of samsara. In other words, once you've attained full, complete nirvana, there is no way to undo it, to fall down after that. Okay? This counters the misconception that liberation is reversible and the ultimate state of peace can degenerate. And some people think that. Yeah, you get nirvana and then, you know, ignorance comes again or hatred comes again and you fall down. Impossible. Because true cessation is the elimination of all afflictions and karma, there can no longer exist any cause for rebirth or samsaric dukkha. Once attained, liberation cannot degenerate. Okay? Because the cause of dukkha has been eliminated from the root, so there's no cause to make the liberation degenerate. Okay? So contemplating these four attributes encourages us not to stop partway, but to continue practicing until we attain nirvana. Okay, so we do the four attributes of true paths. Keep going. So the Pali tradition describes true paths as the Eightfold Noble Path. Madhyamikas say a true path is an Arya's realization informed by the wisdom directly realizing the emptiness of inherent existence. Okay? There's a bit of a difference in the definition of true paths. True paths exist in the mind streams of all Aryas of all three vehicles. This is according to both Pali and Sanskrit traditions. The wisdom realizing emptiness or selflessness is the principal true path because it directly contradicts ignorance. While ignorance grasps inherent existence, the wisdom realizing emptiness sees the absence of inherent existence. So that's why the wisdom has the power to eliminate the ignorance. It perceives the exact opposite of what ignorance perceives, so ignorance can't function because the exact opposite is being realized at that moment. Thus, wisdom is able to completely uproot ignorance and the afflictions stemming from it. When afflictions cease, polluted karma is no longer created. There is no further impetus to be reborn in samsara, and liberation is attained. Okay, so first attribute. The wisdom directly realizing selflessness is the path because it is the unmistaken path to liberation. Okay? So this wisdom leads to liberation. Knowing this counters the misconception that there is no path that releases us from samsara and gives us the confidence to practice it. If we believe there is no path, we will not venture to learn and practice it and will thus remain trapped in samsara. Yeah? So we may say, yeah, ignorance, afflictions, karma cause samsara, but there's no way out of them. There's nothing to practice to get out of it. Yeah? Or you're either born with nirvana or you're not born with it. Yeah? No way to practice it. Okay, then the second. The wisdom directly realizing selflessness is suitable because it acts as the direct counterforce to the afflictions. Okay? So direct counterforce. It's the totally opposite to the afflictions. It doesn't chip away at the afflictions by, here's the afflictions and the counterforce just goes like a little bit that side. It goes boom, straight on. Okay? So the wisdom realizing selflessness is the correct path because it is a powerful antidote that directly counteracts self-grasping and eliminates dukkha. Understanding this eliminates the misconception that this wisdom is not a path to liberation. So somebody may have that wrong view. Oh yes, realizing emptiness is very nice, but so what? What good does it do you? Yeah? So that person doesn't understand what ignorance is and doesn't understand how wisdom is the direct antidote to it. This particular wisdom is the direct antidote. With the knowledge that it is the path to liberation, we will be eager to cultivate this wisdom and know, we will be eager to cultivate this wisdom that knows the nature of bondage and release from samsara just as it is. Okay? And then 3, the wisdom realizing selflessness is accomplishment because it unmistakably realizes the nature of the mind. Unlike worldly paths that cannot accomplish our ultimate goal, worldly paths such as, developing the meditative afflictions or creating good karma to have a good rebirth in samsara. Okay, so unlike worldly paths that cannot accomplish our ultimate goal, this wisdom leads to unmistaken spiritual attainments because it is an exalted wisdom that directly realizes the final mode of existence of the mind, its emptiness of inherent existence. By doing so, it eradicates afflictions and accomplishes liberation. Okay, so it knows the final mode of existence of the mind. And the realization of the emptiness of the mind is especially important because the mind is what is often the basis of designation of the person. So, to realize the emptiness of the person, and have that stick, you have to realize the emptiness of the mind, the emptiness of all phenomena, actually. But, the emptiness of the mind's very important. Because if you think, oh, well, the person's empty, it exists by being merely imputed, but the mind is truly existent, then actually you haven't perceived, you still have an inferential level of understanding of emptiness, put it that way. Or you don't even have that. Maybe you still have a correct assumption. Yeah, because it should be that if you realize the emptiness of the I, then by just inferentially, then by just turning the mind to any other object, automatically you inferentially realize its emptiness too. Okay? But if you can't do that, then either you don't know how to redirect the reasoning or you don't have the correct realization yet. Okay. Okay, so we read the first paragraph of that. Yeah. Okay. Understanding this counteracts the misconception that worldly paths, such as the meditative absorptions of the material and immaterial realms, eradicate dukkha. Blissful as they may be, these absorptions do not secure true liberation. Similarly, the worldly path of extreme asceticism does not eliminate craving. So that's another worldly path that people mistakenly take, rather than realizing emptiness. Okay, then 4, the wisdom directly realizing selflessness is deliverance because it brings irreversible liberation. Okay, so phenomena lack inherent existence. Inherent existence and non-inherent existence are mutually exclusive and contradictory. By realizing the lack of inherent existence, wisdom can conclusively remove the ignorance grasping inherent existence. Definitely eliminating all obscurations, this wisdom does not stop partway, but delivers us from samsara completely so that dukkha can never reappear. This counteracts the misconception that afflictions can regenerate and cannot be totally eradicated. It also counteracts the mistaken notion that while some paths may cease some attributes of dukkha, no path can cease it completely. So if you think either of those things, that some paths, may counteract some aspects of dukkha or some of the afflictions, but there's nothing that can counteract all of the afflictions, then again, you're saying to yourself, there's no chance for nirvana, no chance for real freedom. Okay? So contemplating these four attributes encourages us to meditate on true paths, destroy dukkha and its origins, and actualize final true cessations. Okay? So there's a lot to meditate on here, isn't there? Yeah? So when you go through these, with each of them, first understand what it is, the introductory section for each of the truths, understand what it is, what the example is, and then go, look at each of the syllogisms, understand why that reason proves the thesis of the syllogism, okay? And then check your own mind and see if you really believe that, or if somehow lurking in you somewhere, you believe the opposite. Yeah? And then if you find you believe the opposite, then really go through this and contemplate. And when I say, contemplate the syllogism, this isn't just words and intellectual, It isn't like the first one. What was our first syllogism here with impermanence? Yeah, the polluted aggregates are impermanent because they undergo continuous momentary arising and disintegration. Oh yeah, that's true. So, if you're meditating like that, you're not meditating. So you have to really look at it, well, do I think that my polluted aggregates are impermanent because they're momentarily arising and disintegrating? And if I really believe that, how would that alter how I view life? Or even any of this one, like this one, the wisdom directly realizing selflessness is the path because it is the unmistaken path to liberation. Now, why in the world is this wisdom the unmistaken path to liberation? Why? Yeah? Well, because it realizes the opposite of what ignorance realizes. But you have to understand that, and then you have to understand why the emptiness of inherent existence is the reality and why ignorance isn't. So you have to understand something about emptiness, to understand that. So when you really go into these, it really makes you think a whole lot, and makes you look at, well, what do I really believe? Yeah, do I believe liberation is possible? Do I believe that this wisdom is actually the thing that does it? Yeah, so you can see that we have to come back to these points again and again and really think about them, because at the beginning, for example, when we don't understand what emptiness is very well, because we don't understand what ignorance is very well, then understanding why the realization of emptiness counteracts ignorance, it's like, well, I'll take your word for it, but I don't really get it. Yeah. But then as you learn more and study more and you understand what ignorance is and you watch your mind and you begin to identify when ignorance is manifest in your mind, which is not so easy because we always miss the opportunities. What they say whenever there's some, strong emotion, like somebody accuses you of something or you're embarrassed or, like that, to look, and then you'll see ignorance because the way it's grasping the eye, the mind that's grasping the eye at that time, is holding it in a completely erroneous fashion. But do we ever remember to do that? When we're in the midst of getting angry or we're insulted or offended? Forget it. You know? So it's really hard to identify what ignorance is in our own experience, and hard to figure out why that grasping then gives rise to attachment. Because attachments just seem so natural in our lives. Well, of course I should take care of me, I, my, and mine. That's what everybody says. Everybody in the whole world agrees about that. Yeah? So what's wrong with that? Yeah? Yeah, what's wrong with it? If I don't take care of myself, nobody else is going to take care of me. Everybody's going to trample all over me. I need to take care of myself. How am I going to take care of myself? I'm going to stake out my territory and put fences around it and barking dogs around it and chase everybody else away. So we do this physically, we do it emotionally. And we think that's happiness. Okay, so we need to look and watch, how all these misconceptions operate in our mind, and then understand why wisdom realizing emptiness is the antidote, and how that wisdom then will give us liberation, and how liberation is real peace and real satisfaction. Yeah, that's what we need to work on. Okay? So, lot to meditate on here.